Hello, dear friends. Greg Koukl here, back from the Northwoods in Wisconsin. The last couple of weeks I was on a break of sorts. I actually don't ever take vacations. I figured this out. Told my brother this. He asked me about it. He was with me up there in Wisconsin, and usually have a couple of weeks in May, and then in June, July, we have a few more weeks with the family. And when I'm up there early, I can get things in order. And it's a good thing we were there early because there were a lot of things to get in order this time around. But I told Dave, I said, Dave, I don't ever really take a vacation. I just learn to work in different locations. So when I go to Wisconsin and our place up there, which is a beautiful place and getting better because we're always fixing it up and getting improvements and getting it where it really is most enjoyable. Let's put it that way. Last few years we've been overhauling quite a few things, but anyway, that's where I wrote the story of reality, and that's where I did a lot of work on tactics. And I just go up there and I plan to go fishing, and I just put the boat away and I get to work because that's what's important. That has to be done. So I did get a bit of work done when I was up there on business stuff. And then when I go up in a few weeks with my family, I'll be writing a lot because I got a book deadline. My third one, I keep getting extensions, and now this is July 31st. So looking to do that. I got a story to tell you about that trip, though, but a couple of things first. And that is, one, thanks to Jay Warner Wallace and Robbie Lashua filling in for me the last 2 weeks. Appreciate their pinch hitting, and it's always great to know I got a deep bench to go to when I'm not going to be around to do the broadcasts, and I trust you enjoyed them. So my thanks to my buddies there. Second thing is just a quick announcement, 2 items, that next year's Reality Student Apologetics Conference theme has already been decided. It's called Seek and You Will Find, and the emphasis is going to be on deconstruction and deconversion. There's a whole lot of challenge now to young Christians especially to pursue a deconstruction of your point of view, your spiritual point of view. In other words, take every little piece and break it down and, in their mind, those who are encouraging this, show it to be false. Here's why it's stupid, and then you deconvert. I mean, that's the general idea. We don't think that when you look closely at the facts that it turns out to be stupid at all. And so we're going to spend our next conference starting in September in Southern California, and then going to 6 locations like you did last year. We don't think we're going to spend that time teaching the young people, showing them where these particular challenges do not work against Christianity, the ones that progressive types are making against Christianity, and either deconverting or going to progressive Christianity, which is not Christianity at all. I wish they would just find a different name for it, because it isn't. It's just, liberal theology under a new name. That's all it is. Nothing new there. Okay, so that's coming up. You want more details? Realities. Let's see. I'm looking for the website here. I think it's realityapologetics.com. That's it. I know this. I don't have to read it. realityapologetics.com. And also, if you visit our social media, keep an eye on that. You're going to get a sneak peek at what the guys have been up to in preparation for the session. So you may just see Tim and Alan getting facial or whatever they do. So just keep your eyes open for that kind of thing. The other little announcement is that next Wednesday, that would be June 8th. Wednesday, June 8th, John Noyes will be live on his monthly podcast, To the Point. It'll be live on Facebook. It'll be live on Twitter. And how do you do a podcast on Twitter? I don't know. That's what it says here in my announcements. And anyway, it'll be on YouTube also, 12 p.m., June 8th, Pacific time, all right? You can go to str.org, scroll down to the bottom for links to that and all our other social media platforms, so that's available to you. Now, as it stands right now, we have not heard from SCOTUS on their official decision about Roe v. Wade. That will probably come out when I'm gone. Now I think about it, because I'll be leaving on the 11th or the 12th of June to be with my family in northern Wisconsin. Oh, wait a minute, I'm jumping ahead of myself. I told you I had a story about that. So let me just back up a minute. I do have a sovereignty of God story about what happened this last weekend in Wisconsin. Now, when you're not living in a place for most of the year and it gets really cold, things go south, all right? And vehicles that are sitting all winter long, they go south too. And so we had my Tahoe, which has 300,000 miles on, but still runs great. That went south on us. Had to take it in, drop it off at the shop, and for the 2 weeks I was up there, I didn't get to drive that. We have a secondary vehicle, which is like an S10 type SUV, like an old Blazer style. It's actually a Bravada, an Oldsmobile, but it's one of those smaller ones, and that's the car my wife drives. But that was the vehicle that we used to trailer our boat and get around. Well, Dave and I were up there the last 2 weeks, and on Saturday night. And we've had that for about 12 or 14 years, okay? And we don't use it much, but we bought it used. And on Saturday night, we were going out to meet a guy who's a stonemason guy who's going to do some beautiful stonework on the inside of our cabin. And 6:30 Saturday night, we're out in the woods. That's where our place is, It's like 15 miles from town. And there's a flat tire. Hey, you got a flat. We're just about to leave for this meeting. We got a flat. My brother saw it. And that's not good, obviously, because now you're out in the woods. You can't call AAA, so that means you got to do it the old-fashioned way. And Dave opens up the back, gets the jack out. We never used it. We never even brought the jack out. And this is the kind where you stick the jack, you stick the crowbar kind of into a little opening. You got a crank thing, and then you crank it. And the cranking lowers the tire that's underneath the carriage of the back end of the car. It's all hidden there, and then it lowers it, and then you could disconnect it and pull it out. And once you fix the flat, you can put the spare back in there, and you're back in business. Well, he went under there. He went to crank it up. It wouldn't move. It was rusted solid. He drops down, Dave, my brother. He's 4 years younger than me, so what, he's 68. Actually, he'll be 68 in July. So he drops down, goes right under the car, and he looks around, and that whole mechanism that drops the tire is completely immobile and rusted. All I hear from Dave is, get me a cold chisel and a hammer. Now, cold chisel is a chisel you use for rock work, right? So I went in, got the cold chisel and the hammer, and bang, 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 and then I hear the boom, the tire comes down, and what he had to do was actually bust the mechanism that was holding the tire up. And of course, when it's not holding the tire up, it just drops down, and it dropped right on top of him, but he ended up pulling it out. Now we got our spare tire out. We're not going to be able to put it back there. We know that because it's all broken, because it was all rusted out. So we quickly changed the tire and off we go. Now I'm thinking, and he's telling me, we don't know how good this tire is because that has never been out from underneath the car ever before. All right. And we don't know how long it's going to last or whatever. It's been up there for years and years and years. Fortunately, it's still air in it. We were able to get to my buddy's place, the stonemason guy. We did our work. We came back, and Dave was telling me, hey, keep your hands on the steering wheel because if that tire goes, you're going to go right in the ditch. All right, front right. That's the dangerous ones. Actually, it's more dangerous on the left because you could get pulled into traffic. But in any event, so then I realized we got old tires. It would be best for me just to go and get new tires because now we're driving without a spare. We got a flat tire in the back of the truck now. Okay, so I got to get a new tire. Might as well get them all. Where am I going to do that? Saturday night, Memorial Day weekend in the North Woods, in small town, nobody's open anywhere except the Super Walmart. That's 45 minutes south at Rhinelander, where we fly into. So I checked online. Yes, the auto service is available. I got out there early in the morning, and sure enough, they were open. They got a line of people waiting for tires, and they don't have the tires that I need. The cheap ones, the $80 ones, they only have 3, not 4. I need 4. Well, what about Wausau? He calls into Wausau. Yeah, they got 4 tires. They label them for me. They're free, they're open for an appointment. I set it up, and I drive another hour south to get it taken care of. Got it on. All this to say, Once I got the new tires on, I told them, take any of the other old tires and we'll use the best one and we'll use it as a spare. But I don't want the old spare because I don't know what's good. When they're all done, that old spare is in the back of my car. I say, hey, what's up? I didn't want this one. They said, when we took the tires off the rims to put new tires on, every single one of the tires shredded. They split right down the middle when we took them off. In other words, my wife has been driving on a time bomb and all four wheels. And fortunately, in our driveway that Saturday night, the thing that we thought was a headache, and it was a headache, the tire going flat, which forced us to fix it, and then, we better get new tires. That is the thing that stimulated the impulse to get the new tires, which we found out were absolutely necessary because every one of those other tires was about to go. So now I got new tires all the way around, and I was thanking God for the flat tire. Now, there's a lesson here, because there's all kinds of things that go south in our lives, and it's hard to rejoice over them because we don't see how God has ordained some hardship in our life to produce some good in our life or somebody else's life. And maybe it's not tomorrow or next week, maybe it's years down the line. But virtually every one of you who has walked with the Lord for very long can look down the line at your own lives and seen things that went south that you got bugged at God about, and then later you realize that was a blessing in disguise. And that was what happened on Saturday night with our flat tire. Didn't seem like a blessing at the time, and then we had to bust that spare tire holder, so we got to figure out some way to carry the spare tire now. Probably get one of those little bitty donut spare tires, because I got to buy another tire. Get one of those little ones that suffice for getting you around until you get a flat fixed, and then get a cover for that and strap it on the top of the vehicle. Then at least we'll have the cargo area available. But I had to say, God, I'm going to give you credit for this. And thank you for protecting us by allowing this hardship to come in our life that alerted us to a problem that we fixed so my family would be able to drive safely, not just this summer, but many summers. I had never in all those years ever done anything with the tires. Turned out they were 16 years old. I saw some old records about it. No, you're not supposed to keep any tire that long, even if it's not flat, even if it's not bald. They just wear out and they become dangerous. So that was one of the number of adventures we had. The water heater elements went out. And fortunately, when they went out 6 years ago, I bought some extra ones and I had it in the shed along with the device that takes that off. And so Dave emptied the water heater and put the new devices in and filled it up. And it didn't take very long, so we had hot water again. Another little thing that happened. But anyway, that was one of my Koukl adventures in Wisconsin, and I wanted to offer that as kind of a lesson, a spiritual lesson, in case you're facing something really unpleasant, awkward, and inconvenient. It just may turn out to be a blessing in disguise. So now back to what I launched out on a few moments ago, and that was talking about SCOTUS has not weighed in yet officially about their Roe v. Wade decision, although it looks like we got a glimpse from Alito's draft a couple of months ago when Politico leaked it illegally and caused all kinds of problems, and there has been lots of hostile reaction to what appears to be a turnaround with regards to Roe versus Wade, which, in my view, obviously is really good. We'll talk about slavery in a minute, but as bad as slavery was, it doesn't hold a candle to what has happened as a result of Roe v. Wade almost 48 years ago. It doesn't hold a candle to it. And maybe I'll talk a little bit later in the show about comparison, but I'll just say it right now. There were 300,000 African slaves in America, what we now call the United States, which was just the colonies and southern states, etc. 300,000. There were more in the East Indies, but only 300,000. Oh, when I say only, I think that isn't to diminish the anguish. It's to put it in perspective, because 300,000 is actually less than the number of babies who are aborted in 6 months in the United States of America. And it's probably closer to 3 months, but I'm just trying to be not to exaggerate. 300,000 in 6 months times 2 is 1 year, times 48 years under Roe v. Wade. And those aren't babies that are enslaved. Those are babies that are killed. So just to put it all in perspective, there are people that are sanguine about abortion, even Christians, and they don't think of it in comparison to slavery, which is a drop in the bucket compared to the evil of abortion. Just doing the numbers, all right? Now, with that in mind, I mean, even so, it's good that Roe v. Wade is at least going to be pushed to the states, because about half the states will not allow abortion. And this is making a lot of people angry, and it's made a lot of people violent too. And when this becomes official, if it does, then there's going to be a lot more violence in the streets, because this is the way the left responds when they don't get their way. Historically, it's always been the case. But there are also tweets and memes and all kinds of things flooding the social media market. And Tim Barnett sent me one a couple of weeks ago, and all he said there was, you can't make this up. You can't make these things up. That is, truth is stranger than fiction. This is a piece from Joe Luhmann. That's Luehmann. And I think we've responded to some things of hers before. Well, nothing wrong with her putting things out. I think it's appropriate for people to air their views in the public square without being censored, as many are being censored. But this was a pro-abortion tweet. So even in spite of what it says, of course, Twitter wasn't, or whoever, actually there's 2,500 likes for this. So what gets liked? Is that tweets that get liked? Or I don't know how these things work. But in any event, so it's one of those social media. Here's what she says. Okay, fasten your seatbelts. I would rather get an abortion than have a brown child who ends up being adopted by white evangelicals. I would rather get an abortion than have a brown child who ends up being adopted by white evangelicals. And then she says, it's not a kindness to children of the global majority. Now, that would be people of color is what she's referring to. The global majority is not white. The global majority is non-white, POC, people of color. So it's not a kindness to give children of the global majority. Notice how she deals with the group. In all these cases, white evangelicals as a group, global majority as a group, to take those children and give them to people who will traumatize them with self and ancestral hatred. And then she closes, an abortion is an act of love. So if she got pregnant with a brown child, rather than run the risk of a white Christian adopting that child, as an act of love, she would kill the child instead, so that that child would not be traumatized in the future by the self-centered Christians characterized by ancestral hatred. So where is all that coming from? Well, this is straight out of critical race theory. This is, or as they would characterize it now, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is these groups, white evangelicals, against this other group, the global majority of people of color, and they are out there to hate them and traumatize them. And the best way to save a child from that is to take the child's life through abortion. This is her point of view. 2,503 likes. Now, there's another comment underneath that, and I think it's hers. It has her name on it. Mentions of abortion and adoption. This is like regarding mentions of abortion and adoption, because some will say adoption's a great option to an abortion. Here she's arguing against that, because who's going to adopt it? These awful white Christian people who will traumatize the child with hatred are going to adopt it. She says, please understand, this is why adoption is further not an option for me. Adoption is not a solution to abortion, period, for the reason she puts up there. And then she writes, white and Christian supremacy kill people of the global majority. They kill LGBTQ plus people. They kill religious minorities. Why would I give a brown child to such a person? Now, this is where my own copy, since it's a printout of a screenshot, cuts off. I don't see the rest of this. But you see where she's going with this. What kind of mentality is this? That it's better to kill a baby than to give that child to white evangelicals, Christians, and then because we're the people who kill LGBT people. We kill religious minorities. Just as a point of information, there is warfare and killing and genocide all over the globe. The majority is people of color on the globe, if you count Asians as well, which they do because they're not white, I guess. And well, then who is doing all of this violence all over the globe? It certainly isn't white people. White people are concentrated in smaller areas. Okay? Who is doing all this violence? In Africa, all of the violence is black on black violence. There's not a bunch of white people out there. You might have some exceptions in South Africa, but they were exceptions to the rule. And the rule is that millions have been slaughtered as a result of tribal warfare. This has been going on for decades there. Millions and millions have been slaughtered through tribal warfare, and many of them slaughtered with a machete. So that's not white people killing. Where are the white people killing LGBTQ people? Where is she getting this information? This is the kind of thing that gets taught in your basic university, that some of you are sending your kids to. And by the way, you don't count on whatever Christian university you have in mind as not doing the same thing in some fashion, in some measure, because they're just not. It's almost impossible to find Christian universities that are not influenced by this. All right, there's a few, but not many. Okay, not many true blues anymore. What I've recommended earlier this year about sending your kid to a Christian school is just forget about thinking of it like a Christian school that is going to protect your child by having the right views of the authority of the Bible and the person of Jesus and evangelism and the whole sexuality issue of homosexuality and critical race theory, all of these things that are on the list for me as watch out for these things. You're not going to find one anymore. Master's College, okay, maybe Cal Baptist in Riverside, for example. But then there's a few others, but they're of all the Christian schools, it's hard to find any not taken with this. That's why I said don't send your kid thinking you're going to send them to a Christian school. Think that you're going to send them, when you send them to a Christian school, keep in mind you're sending them to a secularized school that has a lot of Christians that go to it. That's the best way to think of it. Anyway, so like Tim said, you can't make this thing up. Truth is stranger than fiction. And when I read this, it turned my stomach. But this is what we're up against. This is the way people think. Abortion is an act of love, quote, unquote. Okay, enough of that. Let's take a break and to your calls here in just a few moments on Stand to Reason. All righty. Greg Koukl giving you a piece of my mind today, taking your calls, and my number, I used to have this up here somewhere. Where is it? Here it is. Got it. 855-243-9975. That's 855-243-9975. And you can call Tuesdays from 4 until 6 Pacific time, and you can chat with me, as many have done here. Let's go to our first caller, and I think this is somebody I know. Is this Mr. Tim Zub from Toronto?
Yes, it is, Greg.
Mr.
Good
Zub.
to talk to you again.
Nice to talk to you, too. I'm trying to recall when I was at your home, but I think it was, I always want to say like 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Those are my normal time frames, but it could have been 8 years ago or 13 years ago. Who knows?
We have to go to the measuring stick, which is my children, and they were pretty small.
Oh, yeah. Occasionally I've gotten a picture of you in a fairly hefty northern pike. So I don't know if you've done any fishing yet this year.
No luck yet.
No luck yet, huh? Okay. Sounds like you've been out wetting a line, but nothing
got
bit.
out once, yeah.
Okay, all righty. Well, good to talk to you again, Tim. What's on your mind?
Well, it's the balance, our kingdom-mindedness and the joy of the Lord, and then, as you know, I don't want to get into the politics, but we've been kicked in the head here in Canada for 2 years now, and it's and I'm real, and I'm a pretty well-balanced person, and it's really debilitating about your regular day-to-day stuff, because you don't know. I can read the tea leaves of the future kicks in the head that are going to come from government and everywhere, and everywhere I look, it's like that. Even from work, I've had further incidences from work, and it's just it's unending, and I find myself demotivated to even do some of the things, like working on my workshop, the stuff around the house, the things that used to give us great joy. And then you feel guilty about that because that's not kingdom work. That's just your daily life busy work. And I'm bouncing between feeling guilty about not doing enough kingdom stuff and another, and it's really bizarre. And now I have a whole new appreciation when I reread the scriptures, because most of Christian history is times much worse than I'm living right now.
Yes,
And I never had an appreciation how bad it is with the with the things that we have, and I need some perspective on how to keep my eyes focused.
Well, I'm pausing here, Tim, because when I saw your question earlier, you might even heard me when you were talking to Amy on the phone before the show. You called right in, and I said I should ask Tim this question, not have him ask me this question. And because I am struggling with the exact same thing that you just described, okay? And I'll let you know how I deal with it, but I can't say that I'm dealing with it effectively. And we read in the text, it says, the joy of the Lord is my strength. We look at the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness. And I look at my own life in the midst of the struggles that I have, and I have a range of things that are challenging me in my life right now, and both privately and publicly. Okay, publicly, obviously, the same thing you're facing, the same kind of thing. Your circumstances, Tim, in Toronto, in Canada, are more extreme. Okay, no question there. I mean, Tim Barnett is down the road from you somewhere, and we've watched him kind of struggle with these challenges as well. But nevertheless, that external stuff. My wife drove me back from the airport yesterday, and I was just telling her how difficult it is for me when I look all around me at the culture, and I look what is happening to the culture, when I look at the things that I deem valuable in our country, and I see how those things are being corrupted and taken away. When I was on the plane yesterday, I worked for a while writing on the book, and then I said, I got to have a break here. I'm just going to watch a movie. And I knew what I was going to watch because I saw it on the list last time around. And it was National Velvet. I don't know if you're familiar with this movie, Mickey Rooney and Elizabeth Taylor, when she's like 12 or 13 years old. But it was fabulous to watch because it took me back to a different era that didn't have this kind of ugliness associated with it. And Taylor was this effervescent girl, and it was, for me, in those moments, I was deeply moved by the movie, and I'd seen it before, but it just kind of took me out of the present moment. But the fact is, we have to live in the present moment. So that was just a momentary departure. The question is, how can you and I and other Christians draw from the strength of the Lord when we're in the midst of very trying circumstances? And some people have trying circumstances in their private life as well as their public life. And this is where I find myself to some degree, but I don't think I'm different. Most people have challenges in both areas of some sort. And sometimes it just feels overwhelming. It does not feel joyful, okay? And even in my time with the Lord today, driving out to the studio and even, lying awake early in the morning, praying, anguishing over a number of things that are going on, and pleading with God for a answer to my requests in certain areas, okay, and not seeing them, realizing that what I have to do is to endure probably through the circumstances in a godly way, even if I don't get the relief that I'm praying for, okay, and trusting that God is going to do something better through the process of me enduring than him giving me relief in certain things, all right? Now, you've been around long enough to understand that point. But it does, the other part of me wants to say, okay, I get it, but what about like helping me with my attitude and on a subjective basis, feeling really good about that or joyful about that, to use your term, in the biblical term. And that is very difficult for me to lay hold of. It's at this stage in my life. There are other stages where it was easier, but it just sometimes when it seems like the floodgates break, what I have to hold on to is not my feeling of contentment or joy, which are biblical norms, being content in all things. Paul said, I've learned the secret of being content. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. The joy of the Lord is my strength. It's a fruit of the Spirit. But laying hold of that, I think, is a challenge in certain times. And I know there are people listening, Tim, who are going through much more difficult things than you and I are going through. And they're wondering, where's the joy? And I don't know how that works. Sometimes it's there and sometimes it isn't. It's maybe a function of my own immaturity. I know what Scripture tells us to do. Consider it joy when you encounter various trials. James starts his book that way, his letter. Consider it joy. In other words, count it as joy. That doesn't feel too good to count it as joy. Jesus said in Matthew 5, when you are persecuted, rejoice. There's another place. So I think sometimes these are things that we lay hold of by an act of will. And then as we discipline ourselves to do this, then the subjective side follows along. I don't know if that makes any sense. I think a lot of times we wait for this to happen instead of, what am I doing? I'm saying, God, thank you for that flat tire. It still was a pain in the butt. But thank you for that flat tire. That was a good thing. Because if you heard the early commentary, that's what alerted me to the problem in the tires, all of them. And I got them all replaced, and now we're safe when we were really dangerous and I didn't know it. God, you asked me to consider it joy, various trials. I'm in trial. I'm not feeling joy. What do I have to do? I have to consider it joy. I have to count it. Okay, God is going to work out something good in this because he has his hand in everything. And there's nothing that passes into my life that hasn't passed through his hand first. So I guess what I would say, Tim, is I completely identify. I don't just understand, I identify. I feel what you're feeling. And that is the lack of joy in the hardship, and I feel and I experience the same frustration because this isn't what it's supposed to be like. I don't know what to do about that other than try to be obedient to God and be virtuous in the midst of the trials in a way that's appropriate to the circumstances I'm facing, whether it's professional or private, to be virtuous in that circumstance, to do the right thing before God, and then trust that he is going to then take care of it if I do the right thing. And sometimes I'm going to feel good about that, and sometimes I'm not going to feel good about that. I got teenage kids, right?
Yeah.
And you're probably past that stage. I don't know. I can't remember because your kids
just
were
coming into it.
Oh, okay. All right. So, well, that's, I didn't think this was required or necessary of adolescence, and I know some families who have escaped it, but characteristically, when kids get about 13 or 14, especially if they're girls, they just go off their rocker. Okay?
Yeah, that's where I am now.
And it's like, what, who are you and what did you do with my daughter kind of thing? And for me, the kind of dad I am, that's really hard emotionally, really, really hard. And so when I face I guess for lack of a better word, rejection from my daughters in different kinds of ways, because this is the stage they're in, they don't want anything to do with Papa. It's mom's the whole game, and so this is very hard for me. I do not feel joyful, but what I do is I take it to the Lord, and I take the anguish in my heart to the Lord, and I pour it out to him. Sometimes I pour it out to other people as well, close friends, which is also good to have. But nevertheless, taking it to the Lord and letting him be the one who receives the anguish in our hearts, about these things we're facing, and then asking him to help us to have the kind of joy that is appropriate for being a Christian who trusts in Christ.
The one thing that I do that does work, that's keeping me through a lot of things, is that, when I stand before God, I'm going to have failed at a million things. But
That's
the one
right.
thing I really want to have to be able to say is that I was the most grateful person. I would be one of the top most grateful people standing before God, because every day, I just, all the things, I am blessed. I have so many things that I'm blessed. It's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I really do focus on those things, and I verbalize them, and
that's
I
a great
really
focus.
work with my children with that, because you know how children can gripe about so much when they have everything, and I just drill that into them.
To be grateful.
You need to be grateful for what you have.
Yeah.
If we we may not be the best stewards of everything God's given us, but we better darn well be grateful.
Yeah, Tim, that's a great lesson to teach them. I remember many years ago when our kids were young, my wife got this book that was written by like Teacher of the Year in America kind of thing, and it was these 50 rules that he taught his students, and one of them was that whenever I give anybody anything, they have to say thank you immediately for it. And if they don't say thank you, I take it away. And you don't get it. And so, like a lot of things, this is meant to be a habit that you develop, but when you develop the habit, then it becomes actually something you enjoy, you value for its own sake. And that's what produces gratitude, and that is making people express thanks for things. It develops the attitude of gratitude in their heart. And so that's why I applaud you for doing that with your kids, to making sure that they are thankful. They are thankful for all these things, especially in this generation, it's a generation of ingrates. And I don't want my kids to grow up like that. I see too much of it in them. And I wish I had started sooner and been more consistent. with that thing. So I applaud you for doing that. And I want to do the same thing if I have a hard time starting in my prayer time because I'm just anguished, upset, or frustrated before God with the way things are going in my life that I'm concerned about and I've been praying about. If I start with the things that I am thankful for, that gets the ball rolling. And a lot of times I'm thankful. I just say, God, thank you for my F-150. I'm driving my truck, I love it. It's clean. It runs well. And my daughters and my wife call it the bubble because they get in it and they feel completely enveloped in safety because it's a big truck, not like her little 2004 Honda with the SUV, the Pilot or whatever it is. And so I'm thankful for that. Now that's just a car or a truck, whatever. Well, it's a place to start. There's all kinds of things that we have. It's just to get rolling. And I look around me and I look at, where I live and the people I know and the work I get to do. And so once I get rolling on giving thanks for these things, it kind of oils the machinery, making my attitude right before God. So that recommendation that you offered is really a valuable one. But sometimes it's just, I wish I could say I know the secret to this, but I don't. And it is something the Scripture talks about, but there are lots of things the Scripture talks about that it is a challenge of our lifetime to learn how to do and unlock and experience. It's part of our spiritual growth. I've been a Christian 48 years. I still don't know how prayer works. I just know the first rule of prayer, and the first rule of prayer is to pray. That's the first rule. And that's why how does it work? What's the calculus of prayer? How much do I pray and other people, and how much does it add up to get something done? I have no idea. But I know I'm supposed to pray. Be devoted to it with an attitude of thanksgiving is what Paul writes in Colossians. So I want to be devoted to prayer and pray, even when I feel feeble. But this is where the grace of God's going to have to come in on my behalf because I can't do it myself. I wish I had a better report to give you, Tim.
It's just good to even talk to you. It's been too long, actually.
Yeah. Well, I don't get up to Toronto too often, Tim does the work up there. But anyway, if maybe what I'm thinking about people who are listening too, Tim, and maybe this doesn't, and I've said this before, but maybe what I have to say doesn't make them feel better, but it makes them feel better about feeling bad, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I think the Christian life is a struggle. And I spent a lot of time in 1 Peter because 1 Peter, like a number of books, was written to suffering Christians. So was Hebrews. So was 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. And so was Philippians. So was Ephesians. Well, Ephesians was written by Paul in jail, and also Philippians and Colossians. So that is a theme that is very prominent in Scripture, and we actually don't talk about it enough, so that people don't feel alienated somehow or unchristian when they go through really hard times. That is the norm. It is not the exception. If I read those books correctly, most of those books are written to suffering Christians. Hebrews, 1 Peter, like I said, and Thessalonians. So both of them, and a number of others. So it's just it's meant. I think sometimes it's harder for us because we have a wrong expectation of what to experience as a Christian. The things that are harder for me, though, Tim, are when it seems that Scripture gives certain directives or makes certain promises that I cannot get to work in my life. And that's one of them that you brought up, the joy of the Lord, fruit of the Spirit, source of our strength. Okay, I need more of that. How do we get it? Just keep pressing forward, persevering. Okay, buddy?
Yeah, thank you very much, Greg.
Hey, it's good talking to you, Tim. God keep you, brother.
Okay, hope to see you soon.
All right, bye-bye now. That's hard, friends. I wish I gave you a rosier picture, but I got to be straightforward with you. I just got to be straightforward with you on these things. Well, now let's just look at my timing here. I want to shift to another. Actually, let you know about a new thing that we're doing, and we haven't got a clever name for this, so we're just calling it "Call In and Record." Amy's she's chuckling in grief here. We're trying to think of a name, but here's the deal: you can. If you can't call in and wait, like Corey's doing right now and Philip's doing right now, and Tim was doing, you can call in and leave a message if you call to the right place. All right, don't call our office. That won't help. It'll drive our people crazy. Go to our website, to our homepage, str.org, and under the drop-down, find podcasts and go to live broadcasts. And right there at live broadcast, you will see a panel that will allow you to record your own question. So we are building up a backlog of these questions that people actually call in and record, and then I can respond to on the air. And I'm taking some time off coming up, and so in order to fill in for the time I'll be away, we can do a whole show of call-ins like that. It'd be great to have that many people call in. And so very easy to go to. Go to our homepage, str.org, drop down on podcasts and see live broadcasts. Go there, and then you'll see on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see an explanation of how this works, and then push the button and start recording. It's that simple. Amy wants to tell me something. Oh, that's good. Okay, Amy says it's especially good for people who live in another country where you're paying the big bucks for the phone call. Okay, so and you're waiting. We try to give preference to those who are on another continent because we know how difficult it is. But in any event, that's a great suggestion. So, excuse me. Let's hear from Allie Higgison. This is our first our launch of this new capability here. Let's hear what Allie Higgison has to say.
Hey Greg, my name is Allie, and my question is this. Based off of passages such as Matthew 10:23 and Mark 9:1, did Jesus cause his disciples to believe that his second return would be during their lifetime? And if the answer is yes, then what does this mean for us today?
Yeah, that's a great question. I get asked that, and nice and clear. I like the way that works. Okay, I'm going to Matthew 10:23 to look this up, and I think this has been an awkward kind of issue because there are a number of verses that suggest this. Now, I think the Matthew passage might have a fairly straightforward response. Matthew 10:23. I'm slow on turning my pages here. I think I know what that is. Okay. No, it's a different one. And he's talking here, this is Olivet Discourse, actually, I think, in Matthew 24 is, but it's similar information. It says, you will be, brother will betray brother to death, and father child, and children will rise up against parents, and they will be put to death. Oh, I know this passage. He's giving warning to the disciples about going out on a first missionary journey, and there's short-term missions, and he's saying, this is what's ahead of you. And it seems like he's giving, in this section, longer-term perspective. You will be hated by all because of my name, but it's the one who has endured to the end who will be saved. But whenever they persecute you in one city, flee to the next. For truly I say to you, you will not finish going through the cities of Israel until the Son of Man comes. Now, that's the first reference, and I'll tell you what I have in my Bible, and I've mentioned this in the past, is I have in pencil this question mark, because I'm not entirely sure what that's referring to. Now, Jesus spoke enigmatically. That means in mysterious fashions, okay? And sometimes when we see Jesus speaking, the disciples don't understand, and it could mean a couple of different things. Now, when it says, until the Son of Man comes, we read that 2,000 years later as the second coming. all right, maybe that isn't what he was referring to. Maybe he's referring to the culmination of his, I mean, he was the Son of Man, and he actually was right there. So in one sense, he had already arrived, correct? They don't know about, I'm trying to think, they don't know much, they're not in Matthew 10, about his second coming, okay? They don't know about his death. They don't even understand that whole thing. And after his death, Jesus has to meet with them, explain to them. Road to Emmaus, remember that. So they're not thinking in terms of two comings. Now, it could be Jesus is referring to that, but I'm not sure. Now, certainly, going through the cities of Israel is physically possible within the time span of 2,000 years. Jesus hasn't come again. Maybe this was referring to his culmination of his first coming, that is his death and resurrection. I don't know. That's why I have a question mark there. Let's go to Mark 9 and see what that says. Sometimes he's referring, by the way, when he says you will not see death before you see the glory of the Lord, my glory and my coming, something like that. And the next verse talks about the transfiguration. And so maybe that's what he has in mind there. All right. Here is Mark 9 and verse 1, the other verse in question. And Jesus was saying to them, truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God after it has come in power. Next verse. Now remember, there's no verse marks. Next word. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and brought them up on a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them, and his garments became radiant and exceedingly white, as no launderer on earth can whiten them. And Elijah appeared to them along with Moses, and were talking with Jesus. Now, in this particular passage, this to me is very different than the earlier one in Matthew 10. In this particular passage, it seems obvious because of the positioning of the lines that when Jesus says that some of you will not taste death, some of you standing here who are with me, so he was presumably talking to a larger crowd. Mark 9, actually, no, this is the disciples. They're in Caesarea Philippi. And Jesus is speaking. Mark is kind of collection things. It's not always in chronological order. It's moving quickly through things. But in any event, speaking to them would be the apostolic band that was with him. And then 6 days later, meaning Jesus' appearance in glory, the kingdom of God with power, was what happened 6 days later in the transfiguration. To me, that's pretty obvious in the context of that verse 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, etc., were fulfillments of what Jesus had promised in Mark chapter 9, verse 1. But it does raise other questions. I mean, I think this verse is dealt with, but the Matthew 1 is still a question. And there is also passages in Matthew 24, the Olivet Discourse, that seem to imply that this particular, well, he says that this generation will not pass away until all these things take place. And there are different ways of understanding that. And like I said, Jesus spoke enigmatically. There were a number of things that he said that we're still scratching our head about 2,000 years later. And there are different ideas about what he had in mind. I don't countenance the idea that he meant to communicate that the second coming was going to happen in their lifetimes, and it didn't happen, because that would mean he was wrong. He gave a false prophecy, okay? But I have reasons that are independent, like the resurrection, for example, that Jesus was who he claimed to be, as Paul pointed out in Romans chapter 1, first few verses, that he was declared with power to be the Son of God through the resurrection. So the resurrection demonstrated his authority to speak for God as the Son of God, as God himself actually is what that means, and a validation of his messianic office. So now I have good reason to believe him speaking the truth. When I see things that look odd, that don't seem like they add up, I'm figuring that I'm the one who's misunderstanding it, not Jesus got it wrong. That's the best I can do, and I thank you, Allie, for that great question, and we've launched our new call-in question thing. Go to our website, drop down podcast, go to live broadcasts, and there you can do it yourself. All right, that's it for this show, this hour. Greg Koukl here for Stand to Reason. Give them heaven, friends.